Here to educate the youth about the greatest painters to have ever lived, so you can impress the ladies by knowing who Georgie O'Keeffe is.
Georgie O'Keeffe.
Georgie O'Keeffe? She's a painter, duh.
Basquiat said he learned by looking at art, which is why he produced such great masterpieces like... Maybe this one? Oh, this one. Well anyway, let's get right into the video with Georgie O'Keeffe. She's known for her paintings looking very much like flowers.
These vagina pictures, or paintings, or just painted, I don't know.
Thank you, Jessie. She hated this claim, but it's the only thing that makes her interesting. Gives me grandma painting vibes. See it here. Mark Rothko. Rothko was a Jewish-born painter who made his massive pieces with few colors. They might seem simple, but he actually put a lot of thought on exactly how the viewers saw his paintings. Look at this beautiful piece called Orange and Yellow. He was a heavy drinker and eventually committed suicide like every great painter does. See it here. Andy Warhol. Andy is known as the king of pop art. I quite enjoy his art and I think he was ahead of his time. He was also credited to over 60 movies. Most of them are pretty bad, including this 5-hour movie about someone sleeping. In 1968, a woman gave Andy a script for a play, but he didn't read it. The woman was so angered by this, she decided to shoot poor Andy, but luckily he managed to just survive. Giga Chad move, A tier. Basquiat is quite popular today as he is spawning quite the copycats in the TikTok artist genre. I find it hard to critique his art as it's obviously meant to be super messy and childish. He was a young, black heroin addict living in New York who came from an abusive household, so the story is right there. He eventually died of a heroin overdose at 27. He dated Madonna for a while. B tier. Jackson Pollock. Pollock was a real piece of shit. He got expelled twice from high school, was declared unfit for military service, used to steal food, and was a massive alcoholic, even killing himself and a woman in a drunk driving accident. He is known for his action paintings where he splattered paint on the canvas, conveying his raw emotions. This beautiful piece is titled Number 5, which was sold for a small fortune of 140 million. How about this painting 17A, which was sold for 200 million? His talentless and lazy life shows in his paintings. Mega overrated, F tier. Raphael. Your classic Italian Renaissance painter known for painting his picture with a bunch of philosophers. There has been an ongoing GOAT debate for 500 years between Raphael and Michelangelo as the greatest painter of all time. They lived at the same time and hated each other. Raphael was actually supposed to paint the Sistine Chapel but convinced the Pope to hire Michelangelo instead, hoping to prove that Michelangelo was just a sculptor and could not paint that well. This sadly did not work out. Unlike the dirty and ugly Michelangelo, Raphael was a young, charming man who everyone loved. Donatello is the best turtle though, so A tier. Michelangelo. He considered himself more of a sculptor, but you know he made some decent paintings as well. Did you know he actually hated painting the Sistine Chapel? He had to hold a brush over his head all day and was so angry he even wrote a poem about it. He was also famously dirty and a loner. He wrote over 300 love poems to other men, but I'm sure he said no homo after, so it's okay. Personally, I would describe his work as a bit awkward, B tier. Leonardo Da Vinci, the painter behind the most famous painting of all time, the Mona Lisa. He was truly a creative genius, not only in art but everything else like engineering and anatomy. He made countless layers of different colors to get the richness and depth that made Mona Lisa so famous, and it took him 16 long years of procrastination. He also never married or had children, but he had a lot of male friends, if you know what I mean. S tier. Jan van Eyck, the first oil painter. Well, not really, but he made it cool. He lived during the late 1300s and was one of the first people to actually sign their work. He was quite the genius. Look at his painting, the Arnolfini Wedding. Look at the single lit candle barely lighting up its surroundings. The perfect perspective of the mirror in the background showing two figures thought to be himself and one more person. Also look at how cute this dog is. S tier. Francisco Goya. Finally an edgy painter. He started off as a painter for the Spanish royalty and became the first court painter to the king until he snapped. After he went deaf, he isolated himself and lost his mind. he moved into a nice house and painted the 12 black paintings directly on his walls. Like this creepy painting where Saturn is eating his child. S tier, Salvador Dali, the most well-known surrealist painter, and you've probably seen this painting with a bunch of melting clocks. There's a lot more to break down about Dali besides his beautiful mustache. At the age of 5, Dali's parents took him to the grave of his brother and told Dali that he was the reincarnation of his brother, which had died 9 months before his birth. Dali truly believed this from that point on. To find inspirations for his paintings, he used to fall asleep with a heavy key in his hand, and once he was deep enough asleep, the key would drop and he would wake up and draw his dreams. He also worked with Walt Disney to create the short film Destino. He was super into Hitler and Mussolini, but he often enjoyed controversy and trolling people, so this might not even have been true. He even said, "I often dreamed of Hitler as a woman." Me too, buddy. Me too. Overall, super creative and original, while also having the skill to produce incredibly detailed and beautiful paintings. A lot of surrealist artists struggle to blend things together, just adding a bunch of weird objects here and there, but Dali perfectly managed to blend everything together, which is why he's considered one of the best. S tier, Pablo Picasso. Everyone knows Picasso, known for his cubist art style. At the age of 9, Picasso painted this. 6 years later, he painted this. Quite a genius. He did over 13,000 paintings in his lifetime. Why would someone who could paint so well choose to paint something like this later in life? He worked in many mediums and style and was a master of all of them. He continued innovating and pushing himself his entire career. His talent and variety is quite the genius. B tier. Van Gogh. Van Gogh is the framework for the tragic and mentally ill painter. He worked all his life producing over 2,000 works, but only ever one painting got sold. The Red Vineyard. The psychological aspect is so important in understanding his paintings. His most famous work, The Starry Night, was painted inside a mental asylum after a nervous breakdown. He also cut off his own ear and shot himself. A tier. Caravaggio. A pioneer of these intense paintings where there was a strong contrast between the lights and the shadows, making these super dramatic paintings. Anyway, he once killed a man over a tennis match and was a fugitive from the law for 6 years. He was eventually tired of running and hoped to get a pardon from the Pope in Rome, hoping that his art would spare him. Sadly, he didn't make it that far and was found dead on a beach at 38 years old. A tier. Rembrandt. Considered the greatest painter of his time, the Dutch painter was a master of shadow and light. Even in his simple sketches, with so few lines, Rembrandt added so much dimension through shading. Like many Baroque artists, these works have an amazing realism and emotion to them. He died alone, broke and sad, which is a big plus for painters. A tier. Claude Monet, the most famous impressionist of all time, and perhaps the greatest. He didn't just paint the objects and houses, but painted the atmosphere and the air around it. Monet would work on dozens of paintings of the same scene at a time. He would set up the canvas and work on it for 10 minutes. Then the light would shift as the sun moved and he would put away that canvas and set up the next one. Definitely the best impressionist, but his paintings are blurry and boring to me. B tier. Edward Hopper, the lonely painter, often painting figures alone, thought to show feelings of loneliness after the world faced 2 world wars. Hopper's figures are kinda lifeless and flat, but this is the appeal in his art. The figures just blend in with the paintings and no one really stands out, showing how lonely each person is. A tier. Beksinski? Super creepy surrealist artist who is obviously from Poland. These works are hauntingly beautiful and horrifying. Every painting makes you scared, but at the same time curious what's really going on. He loved painting and wouldn't sell to people who didn't understand his art. At the end of his life, his wife died, his son killed himself and he found the body and he was stabbed to death by his neighbor. Absolutely tragic. A tier. Grant Wood, you've probably seen this disturbing painting of a couple before. Some of his other work is still very unique and beautiful. It's really an amazing style with wild perspectives. His personal life wasn't too interesting. He was married for a year but was a closeted homosexual, so sadly that didn't work out. B tier. Wassily Kandinsky, credited for being the first abstract painter, but this title actually belongs to a Swedish woman named Hilma Klint. I'm not the biggest fan of abstract art, but wouldn't mind owning this piece called Composition X. Hitler was so mad he couldn't get into art school, and that an abstract painter was way more famous than him, so he removed Kandinsky's art from museums, so he remained mostly unknown until after his death. C tier. Frida Kahlo. Kahlo, the surrealist Mexican female painter. She became a painter after she was hospitalized for a year after a bus accident. She had to live with a metal rod through her body after that as well. She mostly did self-portraits, which makes her art very personal, but I enjoy them, even though her technique is lacking compared to some other goats on this list. She's more of a feminist icon as she did a lot for equality as well. C tier. Georges Seurat. Seurat created a new beautiful technique called pointillism, where small dots are applied to the canvas. Truly an impressive and time-consuming technique, where his most famous work took 2 years to complete. He's a bit of a one-hit wonder, but A tier. Rene Magritte. You've probably seen this painting called The Son of a Man. When he was 13, his mother committed suicide by drowning in a river, and when they found her, a piece of cloth was covering her face. In a few of his paintings, a woman's face is covered by a cloth. Very creepy and great artist. S tier. Henri Matisse, the original Fauvist, where they have bright colors and big brush strokes. Sometimes art isn't about chasing perfection in realism. He's very influential in this area as there wasn't done much before him. I like colorful things. B tier. Edouard Munch. Everyone knows the famous Scream, which was sold for $120 million. I really enjoy his other stuff. His paintings have this darkness to them which reflects his traumatic life. He struggled with illness all his life, lost his mom and sister at an early age, got shot by his lover and checked himself into a mental hospital. S tier. Gustav Klimt, known for his stunning golden paintings of beautiful women. This guy really loved women. He painted over 100 different women and had 14 children. His style is so unique and I wouldn't mind owning this beauty. S tier. Paul Cézanne, known as the father of modern art because he broke down complex shapes into simple pieces which further developed into cubism. He painted the same mountain 80 times. That's some dedication. Very influential but not the greatest. B tier. Edouard Manet. Manet hated being called an impressionist, thinking he was a bit too cool for them. He once painted Olympia, which was a whore staring directly into the viewer. It was a parody of Titan's Venus, just to spite the critics and how women were viewed in art. When asked about the abrasive message behind his paintings, Manet responded, "I paint what I see and not what others like to see." Very giga-chad and influential. A tier. Peter Paul Rubens. Rubens was a complete genius. He painted over 1400 works and some like the elevation of the cross is absolutely massive, covering entire rooms filled with detail. He was also very successful painting for kings and queens with many assistants helping him. He was also knighted twice. S tier. Yayoi Kusama, probably the most famous artist living today. She has been painting since a young kid and is now 96 years old. As a child, she saw hallucinations that manifested as flashes of lights or auras, as well as fields of dots and flowers that talked to her. These are shown a lot in her art and her dope infinity rooms. She's actually been living in a mental hospital since 1977 and paints in her studio across the street. Her infinity rooms look cool, but paintings are repetitive and boring. D tier. Pierre Renoir, another impressionist. Most of his paintings are just of people and are pretty boring to me. Let's forget about him. His son was actually Jean Renoir, which was one of the first legendary movie makers, known for writing the rules of the game and the grand illusion. Oh yeah, Pierre the painter can get D tier. That's it, my ranking of painters. There are so many great painters, and if this does well, I could make a part 2. Thanks for watching.